Do you ever feel tired because you're trying to be everything to everyone? I look like this when I get home. When you're at work, you're constantly thinking about home and your commitments there. When you're at home, you're constantly thinking about work. It's like you're open 24/7. For me, I could be in the flow working on a presentation and I get the ping, Mom, I forgot my soccer cleats. Or I could be at home trying to have some quality time with my family, and I'm constantly thinking, man, I wish I had finished that last report. I wish I'd finished that last email. So I struggle with this, and it drains the energy. There's no boundaries. I was constantly exhausted. But it doesn't have to be that way. So I know, Lisa Ann, you already asked this question, but how many folks are familiar, have read this book by Sheryl Sanders? Okay. Most of you. And I, too, after I read it, felt depressed, deflated, stressed out. But I got to say, I was so excited to get it in the mail. Before it came, I'm like, this is going to be my answer. This is going to tell me what I'm supposed to do to fix all this, exhaustion. And it didn't. And it has nothing to do with Sheryl or the book. It had a very important purpose and brought a really critical dialogue to women in the workplace and really owning their careers. But something was missing for me, and possibly for you too. So I went on the search. And I started sort of thinking of myself as, well, if I leaned in any further, I might fall over. So what could be an alternative to that? And after 15 years of sort of my own layman's research, speaking with women across the spectrum, many like you, in all different states, single, married, divorced, kids, non-adopted, mixed, all of that. We're all somewhere on the spectrum. But what it boiled down to was three things. So leading with vulnerability, laughing at ourselves, and letting go of some control. So these three things, they just kept coming up over and over and over again. And I was amazed at what I was willing to do to smooth over the cracks and show my perfect self. And I was amazed at what other women, and men too, by the way, who connect with these ideas, were also willing to do to smooth over the cracks and show their most perfect selves. Now, I don't have a whole lot of time with you today, so I'll just be focusing on the first point, leading with vulnerability. The passion for our work and our careers and our family, it's amazing. And it takes us to places that we never thought we would go. But what's not okay is all the energy that gets drained by filling up the cracks, right? And showing that perfect self. So it's time to stop covering all of that up and making ourselves a little more open and vulnerable. So in the next short minutes, I'll be introducing how to pull more vulnerability into your leadership style to help practice imperfection. And the reason I want to do that, there's two reasons. One is I think it will help you connect better as a leader. And number two, I think it will bring you back some of that energy that has been draining by trying to fill up the gaps and the cracks. So when you think of leadership qualities, what just comes to mind? Feel free to shout out. Confidence. Inspiring. Steadfastness. Authenticity. Ooh. Vision. Yeah. It's all of those things, and you hit on the authenticity piece. But what if I told you that those are window dressing compared to another trait that leaders have, great leaders, and that's vulnerability, right? So that's scary, right? I mean, I can feel some of you pulling away already. It's scary to be vulnerable. It feels like the wrong thing to do, especially for women. We're trying to make ourselves look perfect. We don't want to show weakness. If we show weakness, we might not get that promotion. We might not get invited to the book club. So how do we do this? It feels like the wrong thing to do. But it turns out there's hope. There's research that shows that there's a connectedness and vulnerability. There is a connectedness with vulnerability. So Bren Brown is another fantastic author, speaker. You may have heard of her as well. But she talks a lot about this topic. And she has interviewed thousands of people. And what she has found, and I'll read this because it's worth reading, that people who allow themselves to be vulnerable have a strong sense of love, belonging, and connectedness, and they have the courage to be imperfect. They fully embrace vulnerability. So, how do we bring that into our everyday lives and feel safe with that? So, I'll tell you how I do it, and you do not have to follow my example, and I'll explain these pictures in a second. But about 13 years ago, when I was pregnant with my second child, I started just kind of looking at myself and going, what the heck am I doing? I am trying to, make everything look and work perfectly. And I just started writing things down because they just seemed so silly. And I would, write these notes down and call it loosely 50 Confessions of a Working Mother. And all those stories were neatly stacked in a folder, neatly stacked in a drawer, and they sat there for 10 years, more than 10 years, until I got the courage to pull them up and start telling my story. And I did it in the form of a blog. And there's stories that, I think hopefully some of you can relate to. So this picture to your far left is a reenactment, actually, of a morning when I had to take my little daughters to the dentist, and they were potty training, and there was an accident, and I had to dry these underwear on the vent, and I'm flying down 101. I've got a meeting to catch. Kids got to get to daycare. And this other one with the peanut butter on the keyboard, so that's a reminder of when my 2-year-old could not be consoled. I had a late night call with Asia, my China team, and nothing would work other than having her sit on my lap and smear peanut butter all over my computer keyboard, because of course, when you need to calm your kid down, you're going to give him a peanut butter sandwich, so duh. So these are the sorts of things I write about and blog about and speak about, because I just want to share that it's okay to be imperfect and have these things come up, and we can talk about them and have a laugh at ourselves. But I'm not suggesting that all of you get online and blog about your most vulnerable moments. But I will leave you with a couple of tips, a resource for when you get home, and then one final story, because I know our time is very limited. So a couple things. Expose your conflicts, whether you've got a personal commitment with work or other way around. And many of you probably already do this, but I know some women who won't. They will have stress over sharing commitments and turning down one thing for the other. But I'm here to tell you it's okay. I do it all the time, and nothing bad has happened. So if you're already doing that and you want to take one step further, you might want to consider exposing your calendar. So what do I mean by that? A lot of folks here, I'm sure, have some sort of electronic calendar. You can do it with paper too. For my company, we do use Outlook. And when I look at someone's schedule, it's a bunch of dark bars, so I don't know what they're doing. But I know they're not available, and then I have to call and all that good stuff. But what if you published all of that information so other people could see it? And you can do that with some of these programs, and I have done it for a year, and I can tell you nothing bad has happened to me, even though I include things like dentist appointments, workouts, stuff like that. But it is a little scary, but I keep doing it. I don't know why, but it makes me feel like empowered. So that's a couple of ideas for you that you might want to consider. And next steps, if you're interested in hearing more about these sort of silly, funny stories, if you want more tips, you can sign up for my blog, and it's very easy. Just come find me and give me your business card, and I will make sure you're signed up. And if you're open to sharing your story, that would be fantastic. I have interviewed lots of women. I protect privacy if they're, I'll change names, etc. So if you want to share your story, I think it helps us all to share each other's stories. Feel free to just write open to sharing or sharing on the back of your card, and I will make sure to reach out to you. So finally, I wanted to thank the hosts. This is an amazing event. The energy around here is fantastic. So thanks to Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability Talks. And I'll just leave you with one final story. It's a colleague of mine who is head of operations, where I work at Dow Chemical. So you can only imagine how male-dominated the manufacturing teams must be. But she leads a large group of plant managers. They all come together once a year for like a 4-day meeting. from all over the world, Japan, Latin America, different places in the US, all over Europe. And it's a long affair, all day meetings and all evening fun, so I would call it forced fun. And after the third day, she stood up and she looked at everyone and said, guys, have a great night. I won't be joining you. I'm going to have dinner with my family who haven't had dinner with me for the last three days. And nobody batted an eyelash. So nothing bad happened to her. And that is yet another example of how you can lead with vulnerability and practice imperfection. So thank you.